Hello and welcome to this Happy New Year 2024 episode of Psychedelic Therapy Frontiers, the podcast devoted to exploring the frontiers of psychedelic medicine and what it takes to cultivate a healthy mind, body, and spirit. As always, Psychedelic Therapy Frontiers is brought to you by Numinus. I'm Dr. Steve Thayer, and today my co-host, Dr. Reid Robison, and I talk about how to make this new year your best one yet. We discuss the difference between goals and values, how to set SMART goals in service of your values as you think about New Year's resolutions, why New Year's resolutions tend to fail for so many of us. We discuss the importance of stillness and self-reflection, the exciting developments in psychedelic research and mental health care that we're looking at here in 2024. We even talk about the implications that artificial intelligence have for humanity, and of course, much, much more. Got a couple of announcements for you before we get to the episode. If you're looking for professional training pursuant to becoming a psychedelic-assisted practitioner, then check out the courses we offer here at Numinus. You can click on the link in the show notes or go directly to numinus.com/hour-training-selection, and you can use the code PTF10 for 10% off selected trainings. If you're a longtime listener to the show, you've heard Reid and I talk about the different psychedelic clinical trial work that Numinus does. If you or someone you know is interested in being a participant in one of our clinical trials, you can click on the link in the show notes or go directly to numinus.com/research to learn more about the trials we're currently running. If you'd like to support our show, you can do so by leaving us a review in places like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, even share this episode with somebody you think might benefit from it. If you'd like to email us, you can do so at ptfpodcast@numinus.com. Without further ado, here's our conversation today about making this year your best year yet. Happy New Year, Reid.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you, Steve.
2024. We were talking about, what to record about here at the beginning of this new year. And we recorded kind of a New Year intentions, New Year resolution episode last year, at the beginning of 2023.
I enjoyed that.
It was fun.
I sent it to my mom, and I think she liked it.
Yeah, one of the only episodes that she listened to.
Yeah, I think she listens when I send them.
Oh, there you go.
So maybe we'll send this one.
Cool. Well, we want to hopefully deliver some value to the listeners. We always, of course, try to do that. But we thought it might be apropos, given many of you are probably thinking about what to do differently, how to make this year the best year yet, I think was the clickbaity title that we came up with for this episode. But
we have a title. Cool.
Maybe.
Sometimes
I'll adjust the titles based on what we talk about, because these are pretty organic conversations that we like to have. We do some prep, of course, but trying to just have real conversations for you guys.
Organic is healthy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Non-GMO conversations. Certified organic.
So maybe to kick it off, I was reading some T.S. Eliot recently and saw this little line or two that seemed apropos to New Year's conversations, organic ones.
Yeah,
to see what you think. T.S. Eliot wrote, "For last year's words belong to last year's language, and next year's words await another voice. And to make an end is to make a beginning." What do you think? Close
some doors, open others. Sometimes when you close a door, you open a window. I like that. Last year's words are for, what was it? Last year's language? Something like
belong to last year's language. Next year's await another voice, like another you, essentially. So to make an end is to make a beginning. That line struck me in this idea of a new year as a chance to begin anew, a chance to take an inventory, a fresh start, a new leaf, a new chapter.
Yeah. And really, you can do this at any point in your life, at any moment, but there's something just, one of my kids called it arbitrary. Like, why do we set New Year's resolutions? It's just, arbitrary. It's just the earth revolving around the sun.
Child.
And, yeah. my kids are always bombarding me with good points, but I think whether it's arbitrary or not, it's a good excuse to evaluate your life.
What's wrong with that? Like, we can get hot and bothered about New Year's or triggered, but there is your opportunity to look at your triggers.
There you go.
Yeah. What did I see recently? It was like that old adage of the best time to plant a tree is years ago, and the next best is right freaking now.
Right now.
And it makes me think of this like personal growth tree and what it takes to really plant and nurture a tree, where, you need you need good soil, strong roots and foundation, like, knowing maybe the roots and foundation are knowing who you are, your values. We'll get into some of that, but like reflecting on that, and then the trunk, your attributes, skills, perhaps, and branches maybe being your special powers or things you can offer the world, and they help you reach new heights. And then the fruits, bearing the fruits of your labors, the stuff that comes of all that, but starting at the roots, the soil, the roots, and taking the time it takes to nurture that personal growth tree is one way to look at it.
Yeah. I like that. I like that tree metaphor. I think Jonathan Haidt, in his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, is that his? He says something to that effect, something to the effect of human beings are like plants. You can't force a plant to grow. But like you said, you provide it ourselves with the right conditions, and you nurture it, and then it grows on its own timetable. There are some things, maybe human beings aren't exactly like trees, but some things you can accelerate the timetable on through focused action. But there needs to be some patience, I think, involved in personal growth.
This is a random aside, but do you know how sometimes you post something with a caption you're proud of? I'm remembering, like, I don't know, a decade ago on Facebook. I think it was Facebook. Is that what it's called? No,
Back in the day. Nobody's on Facebook anymore. Come on.
And I posted like a picture of like some weeds growing through a crack in the sidewalk. And I was like, shout out to all the plants growing through concrete. And I thought it was clever, so I'm sharing it to see if you give me some validation and give my ego a pat.
Super, super wise. I love it.
But I'm really sharing it because what you're talking about, humans as plants, it's amazing what humans can do given the conditions we're in, right?
Yeah. We're resilient, like plants and or weeds. I mean, weed is just a plant that you don't want.
Not orchids, but
yeah. Well, sometimes we're like orchids. We take a lot of attention and we're delicate, but sometimes we're like dandelions, and we can grow in stony soil. We can grow in rocks. We can grow through concrete.
Yeah, and this is another tangent, but there is that highly sensitive child scale developed by a pediatrician that uses the metaphor of orchid children versus dandelion children, with the disclaimer that all are equally beautiful. Let's just say that, right?
Yeah.
Like, get that out of the way, because I like dandelions. You can put them in salad.
You can make a tea out of them.
But yeah, some humans, or some times in our life, we do require more TLC to thrive, and there are certainly, say you have a sensitivity to noise around you, just as a silly little example, it might mean that you have to pay a little more attention to the environment to be able to fully function at your highest level, but just knowing yourself in that regard.
Yeah. And looking at our catalog, we did record an episode about knowing yourself, and that'll probably come out after this one. So it'll be related to what we talk about today. Because I think in the spirit of New Year's resolutions, it helps to get to know oneself.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about values clarification today to that end, but I did have a few stats about New Year's resolutions that I thought I'd share. As most people would probably know intuitively that when we set New Year's resolutions, there are effective ways and less effective ways to do them, and that most New Year's resolutions set don't get accomplished or achieved or actualized or realized. So there was one study of survey study of Americans in 2016 that showed that 41% of Americans who make New Year's resolutions, by the end of the year, only 9% feel they are successful in keeping them. And then an earlier study in 2007 showed that 12% of people who set resolutions are successful, even though 52% of those participants were confident of the success at the beginning. So, gym owners know this. They know that January and February, their gyms are packed, and then there's a quick decline in the attendance.
I would have, maybe that says something about me, and I don't think I'm a overly pessimistic person by default, but I would have guessed even lower for some reason, because we all have been there. We've all done it. I can't count the number of resolutions I've had in my life that haven't come to fruition, but I still wonder, there may have been some value in playing with those, right?
I think so. I think so. Regardless of whether you quote unquote fail a resolution, there is likely value in there. A few more stats about why these resolutions don't work out for people. In one study, 35% of participants who quote unquote failed their New Year's resolutions said that they were unrealistic, that the goals they set were maybe too lofty.
They weren't SMART goals.
Right. And we can talk about what SMART goals are. Many of you probably know the acronym, but for those of you who don't, we'll go over it. But 33% of participants said they didn't keep track of their progress.
Deal killer.
23% forgot about their resolutions.
Whoops.
And then it says about 1 in 10 people said that they didn't succeed in their resolutions because they made too many of them.
You have to write it on your third eye, I think.
You have to program it through your pineal gland. Yeah. So since I mentioned it, we can just quickly go over what SMART goals are maybe for people.
Because that it's important. Like if you want to accomplish a resolution, which like why would you be making it if not? Mm-hmm. And I think so many of those ones that I have had and not perfected by end of year, let's say, could have been better stated, better set up for success.
Yeah, and I think, you and I would probably both say that it's important to be gentle and flexible with any kind of pursuit of a goal. It doesn't really, we recently had an episode on self-compassion where we talked a lot about this. But there is a balance between sort of being too easy on yourself and then holding yourself accountable, like applying some discipline and some focus to the things you want to change or the new you that you want to actualize.
So one more thought before the SMART goal acronym here. I'm just thinking of how we as humans are in different spots on this spectrum at different times in our life of over control versus under control. And maybe sometimes we need to not strictly adhere to every one of our self-imposed rules. Or maybe we need a hell of a lot more discipline in our lives, and that's part of the self-awareness. I remember, I think it was just 2 or 3 years ago, I was in a circle with friends on New Year's Day. We were doing some vision boarding and journaling and things. It was really cool. And people were sharing their intentions, New Year's resolutions for the year. And a lot of people were talking about this time of no alcohol they were about to go into. And I remember thinking about that and thinking, based on the, where I was at that point in life, I shared something that raised some eyebrows. I said, I think I would like to drink a little more alcohol because I rarely consume it. I can't remember when I've breathalyzed too high or whatever. That's a risky thing to even say on a podcast because alcoholism is terrible. My grandmother died of alcoholism. I've shared that before. And so I certainly feel that and keep that front and center. But I just bring it up as an example, because of, it applies to many areas of life where we might need to be more gentle with ourselves and more flexible.
Flexible, relaxed. A lot can be discovered when you release a lot of tight constraints and you flow into a more creative, what's the word I'm looking for? Like more free-floating observation rather than sort of disciplined, forceful, go out and create what you want to create kind of mentality, I guess.
Dance with yourself, flow through life.
There you go. Well, yeah, so what are SMART goals? SMART is an acronym. The S stands for specific. So if you're going to set a goal in service of a value, we'll talk, like I said, a bit more about values and how they're different from goals, but specific. So what needs to be accomplished? Who's responsible for it? What steps need to be taken in order to achieve it? So be specific. I'll give an example of a SMART goal here in a minute. But
who's responsible? How much of our New Year's resolutions can we delegate?
Exactly. So specific, the M is measurable. It's hard to know if you're making progress if there aren't metrics.
So if you were setting a goal, say you had this idea, I want to get buff. how would you make that more specific?
So that's my example. So let me finish the acronym,
All right.
and then
I stole it.
You stole it.
I know, Steve. No.
I'm always trying to get jacked, trying to get strong. So measurable, the A is achievable, right? We don't want to set unrealistic goals like was suggested in the stats I read off. Relevant. So we're not going to be particularly motivated to work toward the accomplishment of a goal if it's not relevant to our values, to our life. If it's not really important to us, it's easy to discard. So, why are you setting this particular goal? How does it align with your values? Those types of things. And the T is time bound. So when are you going to start it? How are you going to assess your progress? At what time intervals are you going to assess progress? Mm-hmm. So here's my little example with weightlifting. So a so-called dumb goal, as opposed to a smart goal, might be, I want to get jacked this year, or I want to get strong this year. That's my goal. Mm-hmm. Not very specific, not very measurable, perhaps achievable, but it's hard to know that I achieved jackedness if there aren't specific metrics that I'm measuring, right? So here's an example. I wrote down here. I'm going to improve my muscular strength by following the starting strength barbell training program. I'll measure strength improvement by taking baseline lift maximum in these specific lifts.
Ooh,
so
nice.
Bench press, squat, deadlift, overhead press, bent over row.
Is this real? Are you going to do this?
This is mine, yeah.
Cool.
I'll use a progressive overload strategy, testing maxes again every 5 weeks after a 1 week deload week. And I'll train from, this is a bit arbitrary, I might change this, but 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. at this specific gym. And Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'll prepare my exercise clothes the night before, track my progress using this particular app. So there's a lot of detail in there.
Is the specific gym your garage?
It's both my garage and local gym, that cool. I go to if I don't have the equipment that I need in my garage, or if my garage is too cold. Sometimes it's good to push myself and work out with a barbell that is freezing my hands. It's just sort of like, I'm going to do something hard.
Wim Hof.
And it's a little bit more convenient to go to a gym, but there's a trade-off. Sometimes the gyms are crowded, and it'll annoy me if I can't use a particular, squat rack because it's occupied or whatever. But anyway, that's just an example of the difference between a so-called, like I said, dumb goal and a smart goal, using those principles.
It's a funny continuation of the tangent, but I was just thinking of, mine might be to get unbuff. Not that I'm buff, but what if I want to ditch some muscle to be able to bend more into pretzel shapes more efficiently? Just an example of we're all different places. You got to find your true north.
Well, that's the relevant piece, right? And I think it overlaps with values. So what's the difference between a goal and a value? I like to think of value as a trajectory or a direction. So you could say, I'm going to head west. West isn't something you check off. There's not a checkbox that says I've accomplished west. I discovered west. I finished west. It's an ongoing action, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas a goal is something achievable, something you can check off that box.
We had an episode about something related within the past few months, and I remember sharing the definition of success that I like. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. I think it's Bob Rotello, maybe Dr. Bob, who said that. But what you're saying reminds me of that, and how it is just like consistency and repetition wins the race in these goals. Yeah.
So goals in service of values, kind of just to add to what you're saying, let's say you want to be, a value would be, I want to be a more present parent. That's not something you complete, right? It's not like you're done being a present parent. You never have to do that thing again. It's a value. A goal in service of that value might be, I'm going to be at all of my kids' piano recitals, right?
Okay. I like this one because, it's kind of related to one of my intentions for the year is just bringing more of that fuller and fuller presence into the moments. And the parenting moments are ones that, as a parent, you cherish and value the most. But besides the going to those things, how would you set a smart goal around the everyday moments of presence.
Well, I have one related to parenthood since we're on the topic. I've mentioned in previous episodes that we try to have every night a touch point with the kids. We call them family meetings. So before the youngest goes to bed, I gather the family around and we connect. We share a piece of wisdom. We talk about how their day is going. We talk about their goals. Invite them to contribute pieces of wisdom.
Is this over dinner? Or
It's usually in the evening after dinner, because dinner is a hit or miss. Sometimes the older kids are doing stuff and they're not home, but usually everyone's present before the youngest has to go to bed. And so a goal that's like, I want to be a more present father. I want to be this force of goodness in my kids' life. I want them to have memories of dad being around and dad being a source of safety and comfort and guidance and structure. So that's my value as a parent. And so the specific goal would be, we're going to have this family meeting every night.
Yeah.
Even if it's just 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be long.
I like it. And I'm still stuck with this question of like, in the spirit of New Year's and resolutions or goals versus non-goals, intentions, how would you bring it into your moments? Because it's something I'm trying on in different ways, is like taking an intention each day, or it might be for a time, and bringing it into the everyday flow of life, like the normal waking moments, outside of those ones where you have set it apart for that purpose, where it may even be trickier.
Yeah.
How do you weave your values into those for more presence?
So you can have presence as an overarching value, right?
Yeah.
And then there are opportunities to practice presence each moment. So one way to do that might be to be wherever you are. You can be physically where you are. Like in this conversation, I could be hearing the words that you're saying, but mentally I could be somewhere else. I could be waiting for you to shut up so I could make my awesome point, or I could be thinking about something else. And that can be felt in a conversation with somebody when you're not present. So you can have a goal to do a mindfulness meditation every day at a certain time to help flex that muscle of presence, as an example.
That's a helpful one. Yeah, I like all those, and maybe a SMART goal could be that I'm going to write down these values or revisit them every morning or throughout the day, or carry it around in my pocket. 3x5 card plug, because I've talked about how I use those before. I have a fresh pack of 3x5 cards in my bag.
There you go.
New Year's resolution checked off. I got the cards ready, but just like sometimes I'll even say every time I go through that specific doorway, that's a reminder to take 5 conscious breaths or whatever, or refind my center, things like that. And you can measure how you did. I love to reflect on those in the evening, like journaling, meditating with flexibility, and be like, I didn't do it today, but it's okay because I got many more days ahead. Yeah.
I like that cue that mindfulness teachers will often use when they're teaching people to do kind of standard mindfulness meditation, and that is simply begin again. So, yesterday's content belongs in the past. So at any moment you can like you said, I didn't do it. Great. Simply begin again.
That's been one of the kind of most powerful kind of goal hacks for me over the years, is just remembering that not to wait until tomorrow or next week, next month, next New Year's to begin again. Like you could have a goal around whatever it is, like binge eating and mess up and be like, I'm done for the day, and binge the hell out of the rest of your day, for example, and feel extra worse for extra long. But finding a way to insert that awareness into the moments of struggle and flex that practice muscle has done wonders for me.
Yeah. I think it's a good example of what we were talking about a second ago, and striving to maintain that balance between self-compassion and self-discipline. Not that they're necessarily diametrically opposed, but it takes some compassion, I think, to say, I didn't do the thing I had committed to myself to do. And that is okay. Okay in the sense that I'm not bad for not having executed on this goal, and then recommitting with the simply begin again approach.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that phrase, simply begin again.
So I think a lot of people listening will probably have had the experience that you described where, if you want to continue with the binge eating example, they might have some dietary goals to eat healthier, and they overeat one day, or they eat things that make them feel crappy physiologically, and they sort of have the screw it phenomenon, like, oh, I didn't do it, so now I might as well just totally indulge. And they're off the proverbial wagon, but the wagon's right there. Just hop right back on.
I didn't plant a tree years ago, so all is lost.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I was thinking of, I wanted ivy to grow up my back patio. You've been there over the trellis. Just had this vision. But then the first year went by of being in this house without planting anything. And I was like, oh, shoot. And then I got one or two corners of this trellis planted with some ivy. And one of them had a sprinkler on it, one didn't. And the next thing I know, I'm looking at it, and months had gone by, like a whole season. And one is booming almost to the top. The other is a few inches, and the other two corners are empty, barren.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a fun example of now I just got to put a plant in those other two corners, and it'll do its thing if you have some water.
I'm going to follow up with you next week to see if you're watering that other ivy, Reid.
Ooh, is it? Yeah,
It is snowing outside.
Yeah, this would be fun.
It'd be a weird time to plant the ivy, but hey.
Yeah, why not?
Never too late.
If it dies, at least I tried.
If he dies, he dies. Some of you will have to hunt for that reference, but
I don't know that reference. I'm
looking at our producer, Jamie. Do you know if he dies, he dies? That's a Rocky reference.
Ah.
Was my poor impression of Dolph Lundgren trying to sound Russian, but
it was pretty good.
Thank you. All right, so we covered SMART goals. We talked a bit about the difference between goals and values. Our other episode, we're going to do a deeper dive on knowing yourself and some strategies to develop self-knowledge. 2023 has been a cool year. I'm speaking for myself. It has also been a horrific year for many people. But there were certainly some challenges in my personal life that presented unique opportunities for growth. But I am trying to be optimistic about 2024. It's been a cool year for psychedelic science too, if we want to go down that road.
Yeah. And when you said it's been a cool year, I had a reaction inside of me for a second of like, whoa, it's been a hard year though. Like you quickly pointed out but then I was realizing the beauty in seeing the cool stuff in the year, right? That gratitude reminder. I think it's powerful because those things coexist in life. Life is full of pain and suffering and beautiful moments.
Yeah, let me unpack my statement because as I'm immediately reflecting on it, trying to be present in this moment, I'm in a good mood right now. So I'm looking at my 2023 year through the lens of my current good mood.
Glad we caught you in a good
Caught me in a good mood. Sometimes I'm not, guys.
This would have been a different episode.
But on New Year's Day, I was doing my journal entry, a review of 2023, and I actually didn't want to do it. Like I was kind of in a tired, grumpy mood, and I decided to do it anyway.
Hungover.
Not quite. I actually had a sober New Year's Eve, but so I decided to do it anyway, and I decided to focus on gratitude first. So I'm going through the year, I'm going through my calendar, looking at all the things that happened, and in my bad mood state, I was actually blown away by all the wonderful things that had happened in my life in 2023. So I'm working through my gratitude and I'm noticing my mood changing. And then it puts me in a better mood state to actually look at the things that didn't go so well, right? Because it wasn't just sunshine and rainbows, as they say. So I was able to metabolize some of those things. And then it prepared me well to look forward into 2024 and try to be intentional about how I want to level up or, pick your idiom or trendy phrase, how I want to be more fully expressed or more authentic or amplify and scale my impact in the lives of others as a psychologist and as a professional. But I think it is important in the spirit of gratitude to look at both of the hard things that have happened, the traumas, the tragedies, and the good things.
And not get too caught up on either side of that coin, like not ignoring the negatives or forgetting all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to do. This is semi-related, but in the moments before we started recording and chatting, I was just reflecting on what might be good to chat about. And I was thinking of the question, what did I learn in 2023? What am I taking forward? And one of the things, that has been alive in me recently, and I'm remembering, is just not to make big, lasting, permanent decisions, if you will, based on temporary feelings. Like, I don't feel I'm particularly at risk for that, but I've just had these reminders throughout the year that feelings come and go, like Thich Nhat Hanh says, like clouds on a rainy day. And it's striking how you can see the world so differently in one mood state versus another. And if you're in a state where it feels like all is lost, or you're feeling, hopeless or incredibly defeated or down, it's maybe not the best time to set those SMART goals or go plant that ivy in the frozen soil or whatever it is. Yeah. It may be. I'm just saying that there is a time and a place and an acceptance of the shifting inner states inside of us.
Yeah. Good point. I think it's, again, listen to our next episode about knowing yourself, because I think the better you understand that pattern, and that when you are in these temporary mood states, it is a lens through which you're viewing all the things that are coming at you, and it is impermanent. And if you know that about yourself, you can sort of anchor yourself to a bit of rationality, then you can spare yourself from making some perhaps irrational or rash decisions while you're in those temporary mood states.
Yeah, and that leads me to another tangent to get your thoughts on. This is not really a New Year's resolution question, but I heard this the other day and wanted to see what you think. It was someone saying what the purpose of life is. The purpose of life is to, and true or false, Steve, is to enjoy the passage of time.
I like it. I've often thought the purpose of life is to live, which is maybe unsatisfying to a lot of the listeners, but I certainly want to enjoy the passage of time. I don't want that to exclude the exquisite teacher that sorrow or pain or fear or anger and some of these experiences that maybe wouldn't fall under the umbrella of joy.
Yeah.
What do you think? Why did it strike you?
Well, I think for the same reason. There's something about it that is appealing, but it doesn't feel comprehensive, or there's a part of it that might be missing. And maybe contentment or something like that would be a better way to sum up how to go through the passage of painful time or difficult time. But yeah, I think there is something to be said of extracting joy or feeling it, finding it in life, even when life is difficult, because life is difficult.
Yeah. I think willing engagement with life maybe is important. There were times in my life where I've had the thought, I feel like I'm reluctantly participating in my own life, which didn't feel good. Didn't feel like I was on purpose, as they say.
Yeah.
So, and you can be willing in sort of the mindfulness concept of willingness, surrendering to life and open to all the clouds that are passing through the sky of your awareness. And that can make even the most unpleasant things that happen to you bearable, and maybe even more than bearable, maybe even instructive or valuable.
And Yeah, I like that. And one reason I bring that question up is because I do enjoy this chance to reflect at New Year's, new beginnings. I enjoy revisiting the question of meaning. I know we've talked about meaning recently, but what is the meaning of life? Because it's so relevant to our values and eventually our goals and everything else. But after reading that quote that struck me in a certain way, I found myself and my mind meandering through different ways of thinking about it. Okay, maybe it's the purpose of life is to, find that joy and contentment and help others do the same, right? That encompasses more of this, like, where's the service and the interconnectedness? And I'm like, oh, wait, what would the scientific community say about the meaning of life, and is that at odds with some of the stuff we're saying? I'm like, wait a second. If you just like observe nature and the cycles of life, life is about continuity and growth, or impermanence and interconnectedness, if you will. Like there are these cycles of life, and everything changes, and whether it's stuff in our life or our lives eventually. And then there's that interconnectedness we all have. That I think those are two principles that, really strike me as true to weave into what we're determined to figure out on this podcast. What is the real meaning of life?
Yeah. I think it's difficult to come up with universal principles. You can think about the meaning of a life, or the meaning of a life, or my life right now. You can think about different chapters of meaning, and that sometimes you can derive meaning from a pursuit, a professional pursuit, an interpersonal pursuit, and then you can zoom out and be less sort of focused on a particular outcome. And that's why I sort of make the very general statement that the purpose of life, or the meaning of life, is to simply live life, and it's better when it's done willingly. I don't particularly enjoy doing things that I'm forced to do or compelled to do.
Surrender, and then dance or whatever. But yeah, even so, life is full of change and impermanence, of course, and that interconnectedness. And then there's this sense of chaos, right? The unpredictability, the uncertainty, like we've talked about. But there also is that order in the secret disorder, or the patterns, or those inklings of a higher power, purpose behind it all, that or the cause and effect part of even the scientific way of looking at it, I think gives me a lot of fuel and hope and a sense of peace going into the new year. Even if we're taking an inventory of all the rough stuff that's happened this year, there's also on the other side of that what you learned, and what we're talking about, how you can take the wheel of this ship of your own life and start to steer it in a certain way, even in the chaos of life.
Yeah. And I lately have just loved trying to be thoughtful about the difference, maybe difference isn't the right word, but like the balance between taking that wheel and trying to be at the helm of my ship, and like being really deliberate and focused and purposeful about, okay, what do I want to do professionally? What do I want to create in my family life and in my leisure life, my play, and be less preoccupied with meeting the expectations of others, or helping others accomplish their goals, and more focused on sort of what I want to create and welcome in. So the balance of that with also, like we're talking about, the surrender aspect, what you've called dancing, be flexible like a what is it, like a bamboo stalk, or like a willow branch. Maybe I need to switch my goal from getting strong to getting flexible.
So
join you at a
bend and not break in the face of the winds of life. Like a willow tree. It's a good example, or a bamboo stick.
Right.
But there was a thought I had that I lost it, but maybe it'll return.
It would return from the ether. I was also reflecting on, like I mentioned earlier, sort of the state of the psychedelic science and psychedelic therapy world. Here at the beginning of 2024, we are on the heels of the exciting news that MAPS had submitted their new drug application for MDMA as a MDMA-assisted therapy as treatment for PTSD. Likely, we're hoping get approved by the FDA and may even be in clinics by the end of the year or the beginning of next year. And then just today, I think the news that MAPS PBC rebranded as is it Lycos? I can't remember. Something it's a Greek word for wolf.
And raised $100 million.
Series A, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is important news for the path ahead, the rollout of MDMA. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was exciting to see. And the studies that have come out this year, like the ones that we participated in over the past couple years, like that USONA psilocybin study came out in JAMA. There's been some preliminary MindMed LSD for anxiety results that have been teased in recent weeks that were quite positive. And, of course, there's the Compass pathway stuff. We've just kicked off our Beckley 5-MeO DMT study here down the road from where we're sitting, which is kind of amazing to think about the time we're in.
Yeah. I think we're really going to step into, psychiatry, psychology 3.0 here in the next few years. If 1.0 was psychoanalysis and 2.0 was the sort of chemical imbalance theory of mental illness, then maybe 3.0 is more about circuits and complicated structures and using these really novel compounds, focusing more on phenomenological experience at the hand of these really interesting drugs and how it combines with our 2.0 psychotherapy strategies. Like, I think we're going to be able to get more precise and help a lot more people than we used to be able to.
Yeah, I like all that, this 3.0 idea, because I do often think about what I learned in med school and residency, the state of, say, psychiatry, mental health then. Mm-hmm. This is it's 13, 14 years ago or something like that. Where it's gone to and where it is now, it's this era of not only interventional psychiatry, let's say, where you have these options like ketamine, Spravato, non-daily pill options that have some good data to back them, short and long term, and the ones that are coming, like MDMA plus therapy, psilocybin LSD, like a single dose of LSD in that LSD study for anxiety, showing some lasting improvements. That's a new era. And then the precision thing you mentioned, I think, is another one that lights me up, because traditionally we've just had this bird watching guide for humans, and I say that because I'm a human, and I'll join in this making fun of myself both as a human and as a psychiatrist of like, it's an imperfect science of diagnosis that we know we need more biological and imaging data and everything, and precision ways of evaluating and personalized treatment approaches. So anyway, I am super excited about what lies ahead, even though we have a long way to go.
Yeah, I will say that this idea of precision psychiatry, psychology is on my mind, because I was listening to an interview with Dr. Nolan Williams on Tim Ferriss's podcast this morning, where he's talking about TMS, but really, really targeted rapid TMS, and how transcranial magnetic stimulation has improved, the science has improved. And he's talking about, how that is related to what we're talking about with psychedelic science. He brings up how powerful ibogaine treatment has been for substance use disorders, and how it might be studied for other conditions like bipolar 1, borderline personality disorder, OCD. So I think, lots of gratitude to the researchers at the cutting edge, trying to discard old assumptions and usher us into hopefully this 3.0 era. Yeah,
he was featured in the ibogaine documentary I saw screened at the MAPS Psychedelic Science Conference in Denver, Nolan Williams, as the researcher interviewed and doing brain scans on people, and how blown away he was by ibogaine. But that should be, I haven't confirmed, but should be streamable now, I would hope. It's called Of Night and Light. And it was made by Lucy Walker, who's a brilliant documentary filmmaker. But it was really good. It was really good. I can't wait to get my hands on it and watch it with some people again.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm thinking a lot about that as I think about sort of my own 2024 life and how we can make a big impact in people's lives. I also think 2024 is going for the globe is going to be a year where we have to really get reacquainted with what it means to be a human. And I won't go too far down this rabbit hole, but I think about it a lot. I think artificial general intelligence is upon us. Like we're going to have an AGI here pretty soon.
Yeah, and I thought you were going to mention the ecological and planetary crises too, which
I think they're related.
I know, yeah. But then when you said AI, I was like, oh yeah, that thing has shown up with a vengeance in our faces, and the adoption of like ChatGPT and Midjourney and all that, what it's doing to, the information economy and age we're in, and the art and music community is pretty wild.
Well, if you want to freak yourself out a little bit, listen to Tristan Harris from the Center for Humane Technology talk about the potential existential threat of artificial intelligence. It's also very promising. I mean, it could be how human beings evolve to the next stage. I won't make this episode about AI necessarily, but
about scary things.
Yeah, I try to be an optimist. I think, unfortunately, unlike you, I'm by default more of a pessimist. I've certainly worked on that in my life, but I think as a psychologist, as somebody who studies what it means to be a human being and how we suffer and how we thrive as a human being, that how we relate to our technology has a lot to do with whether or not we suffer and thrive. And you could think of that technology being the smartphones in our pocket, which, you and I are adults in a weird sort of transitional period in human existence where we're old enough to remember what it was like before having personal computers in the home, before having even cable television. I remember what it really meant to change the channel. Like I remember as a kid laying down on the ground, looking at my TV that had like 7 buttons or something, and then using my toe to change the channel, actually pushing buttons to change the channel.
Why your toe?
Because I was too lazy to get up and change it with my hand. I'm reclined, enjoying my staticky TV.
No remote.
Nope, we didn't have a remote. And then, to see the advent of, at least for me, was cable television, and then having a personal computer in the house that was basically, a glorified word processor. Now getting caller ID for the first time, getting my first cell phone, I was 21, and now having a supercomputer in my pocket that gives me instant access to basically the entire breadth and depth of the world's knowledge at my fingertips.
That didn't exist when we were young lads, huh?
No. So we're stepping into a weird, technology has always shifted and influenced the way human minds work, everything from the printing press to, the plow, all these things. I'm getting weird here, but
yeah, but it's true.
I think it's relevant.
I remember as a kid in elementary school, even before Nintendo and whatever, I would get books of code from the library, and on my Texas Instruments computer, I would type these hundreds or thousands sometimes of lines of code to make the game that I could then play on this pixelated computer screen. It's pretty funny to look back at. There's this one Alpiner or some mountain climbing game that was one of my favorites back then. But yeah, it's funny to think about.
Well, so the reason I bring it up is, as I reflect on 2024 and my statement about it, it's going to be important for us to get reacquainted with what it means to be human. In my own life, I've noticed how my attention span has been shortened by interacting with some of these digital technologies. But when we have a digital technology that seems like a human, or that, through large language learning models can learn who you are better than your father knows who you are, and maybe it takes our job as a therapist at some not too distant future point. I think it's going to be really important for us to do things like reconnect with nature. It's amazing how my anxiety that I didn't know was there drops when I forest bathe, when I spend some time out in the world from whence I came, right? So as far as my New Year's resolutions, one of them is to cultivate more stillness, spend less time on the screens, use those tools in the wonderful way that they are usable, and just be in nature and be present more. That's kind of how I'm dealing with this potentially frightening advent of this new silicone life form that we're creating.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's been concerning, troubling to me too, the attention span and the impact of modern life and technology just on me personally, and like the pile of great books I have, and how I'm getting through them less, in less big chunks and less efficiently, or there's a better word for that, than I used to. But it's harder to find that stillness unless you have an intention for it. So that's certainly high on my list. Is there's this saying in kind of the yoga, and I think it's in the Bhagavad Gita, that says like, establish yourself in oneness or stillness in the present moment, and then perform your action. And I like that concept of like we were talking about earlier, finding your center, really getting grounded, embodied, and all your values on board, and then act, then decide, then take that step.
Yeah, it's part of being more deliberate in your life as opposed to passive.
Yeah, and then calmness in general, just seeing how calm is a superpower, and if so is gentleness. Like it takes strength to be gentle or to remain calm in situations where, one could get dysregulated, discombobulated, and act out of accord or out of harmony with values.
I think that's actually a really important point, that it takes strength to be gentle. It takes strength to be active and not reactive.
And kind.
And kind, right? It doesn't cost you much to be kind. And I think to tie it into what I was saying earlier, where, if we are saturated by messages coming at us from social media or digital technology, from people whose incentive is to capture and maintain and keep our attention, then, as Tristan says, it becomes a race to the bottom of the brainstem. That's his little phrase that he likes to say. So,
I like that.
We've got large organizations, companies that are incentivized to really, really upset us in ways that keep our eyes glued to the screen. So, a part of my 2024, intention is to not be at the mercy of a person or persons or organization that wants to exploit me. Using, my base sort of limbic ancestral programming to get mad and to other the other and protect myself from perceived dangers. And instead, rest, be at peace, and have the courage to be kind and to be calm and to act in a way that is most consistent with my values, and not react in a way that is fearful and angry and defensive.
Calm is a superpower. That goes such a long way. Yeah, just working on whatever can help you kind of keep some of that presence, patience, awareness in the difficult moments.
Yeah.
And perhaps by some of the things we've talked about, seeking discomfort, bringing in mindfulness, like working with your triggers, seeing them as friends to follow, and so you can really work on it like these obstacles and turn them into doorways for personal growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other, as you reflect, Reid, on sort of your year and the year in front of you, other things that you want to keep in mind?
Yeah, there's this one kind of saying I've been sitting with of that encompasses a lot of this, I think, but it says, accept where you are, see where you want to be, and then be where you're going. So it's, a little bit of a mind bender, but that radical acceptance of everything, I think, is a prerequisite for transformative, forward-moving growth, and then that clarity to see, like, that value-based direction, your true north, and then be present for it. Yeah.
What would be where you're going look like, do you think? 'Cause that is quite a mind bender.
Yeah. Well, just like I was saying, of being present every step of the way and not hinging your joy on any future outcomes or steps, and finding as much of that contentment, presence, stillness, enjoyment along the way. Because I've been noticing over the past year, I've been noticing how the impact of getting bombarded by modern, hectic, frenzied life can do. We were talking about like reading books and things being harder, but even just having a plate that feels too full. And this is a pendulum for me that goes kind of month to month, year to year, whatever, back and forth. And so I know it's routine maintenance in some ways, but it's such an important reminder for me that, what does Walt Whitman say? Simplicity is the glory of expression. Just like just simplifying life can also be extremely helpful in enjoying your life or finding contentment along the way.
Yeah. I think it's especially important for those of us that have sort of a doer phenotype, for people that just need to accomplish, need to check those boxes, need to do more, that perhaps simplifying to the essentials would be important. Yeah,
because one thing that having some difficult parts of the year, something that's come of that for me is just seeing the work that I didn't see before, or seeing like some of the, like for example, an inclination to patch up difficult emotions or cover them up with busyness, or just like doing the next thing instead of really feeling it. Like we've said, you gotta feel it to heal it. The only way out is through. These feelings are there for a purpose to help us navigate life, and just making the time and space for that, and attuning to that, so it can become just more and more of that, of a habit and a superpower in the world, if you will, of like, just so you can do that in the difficult moments as well. Like not only remain calm, but remain guided by your inner compass too.
Yeah. One of the ways I'm thinking about a lot of what we're talking about now is through the lens of minimizing unnecessary suffering. We talk about this from a lot of different angles on this podcast, and like a lot of unnecessary suffering for me comes in the form of just being in my own way, not doing the things we've talked about so far on this episode, getting distracted, getting too tied up in my triggers, and not mindful and awareness enough, or aware enough. So, and it's also how oftentimes I approach my clinical work with my clients, is helping them discover through self-inquiry how they are in their own way, and that a lot of it is unnecessary and the product of all the things we've talked about on this podcast over the last, over 2 years, conditioning, trauma, all that kind of stuff. I think it can be a helpful, somewhat simple lens to look at personal development through. How am I in my own way? What are these puppet masters residing in my subconscious mind that are, as Jung would say, dictating my life, and I'm calling them fate? How can I develop awareness around them, heal them, transcend them, make friends with them, so that I can be aligned with my values, accomplish the goals that I want to accomplish, everything that we're talking about today. But I think it's just a helpful way of viewing the personal development goals.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, because just moments before we started this episode, I was, down the hall in another room collecting my thoughts, and the first thing I wrote under lessons learned in 2023 in front of me here is how to get out of my own way. And not that it's fully integrated, but it's just something like, wow, a big reminder of not only the fact that we get in our own way, like you're saying, but the ways specifically I have throughout the year. Like some of the things we've talked about, like much of life is about that interconnectedness, right? And in our interconnectedness, in our relationships, there's so much value in the listening, or the seeking first to understand, or the other thing we were talking about, like getting flooded and reacting. That's the quickest way to like derail a conversation is get dysregulated and act on it, right? But just realizing both the need for that and figuring out how to bring it into the difficult moments. And it took many tries of like going into days or difficult conversations or times with that intention of like listen, like keeping all those ego things in check that naturally develop through life and are understandable, and we've all got them. But that's been a big one, like really trying to take that stance of listening. And this is in the service of kind of a greater value of just spreading light, spreading that loving awareness, or trying to be like, I can't not mention Ram Dass.
Thought you'd make it. Thought you'd make it to the end of the episode.
I maybe next year. But being that space, or that where someone can come up for air, you know, or just like spreading light and being light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've actually thought about that a lot in thinking about what 2024 might hold for me. And that is something that I really love. And it's part of what motivated me to become a psychologist, to become a therapist, but is to provide for people a relationship, either in my professionally for my clients or in my day-to-day relationships. Provide for people a relationship where they can relax, where they can feel like they can unfold, and they don't have to protect. They don't have to feel ashamed or afraid. There's, unfortunately for a lot of us, we have so few of those relationships. So to whatever extent I can be that for other people, I take a lot of joy and satisfaction in it.
Yeah, and this can show up in a number of different ways. Like for me, I'm thinking about just the little moments of making eye contact with strangers, or smiling, or doing random acts of kindness, and how good that feels to everyone involved, and how the ripple effects of that. But then like in the deeper interactions, even still the little ones, having people feel seen, heard, understood, celebrated. Like it's amazing to be able to do that. And we've talked about many of the ways on here, like validating in your communication. So yeah, more of that. And then like, especially in the close relationships where you have a chance to, like we're talking about with kids, for example, the perfect opportunity to really listen and make sure they feel loved, seen, heard, celebrated, understood.
Yeah, and related to that, which is more of a growth edge for me, is knowing and accepting that my capacity to be that for other people is not infinite.
Yeah.
And that I need to have boundaries. And those boundaries are a service to me, but also a service to those people that I'm trying to do this for. If I allow, without boundaries, just anybody at any time to deplete my energy, and like we've said before, I'm not going to be able to serve from a full cup. So it's important that I have the boundaries to help me make sure that my cup is full, so I can serve, abundantly from the excess. And yeah, it's a growth edge for me. That's something that I'm trying to do better, is, get really, really clear about what my no's are, so that my yeses are hell yeses.
And we're getting into the realm of the topic we've covered not too long ago of people pleasing, and how difficult that can be to say no sometimes, but how important it is. Yeah.
Well, awesome, Reid. Anything else to say to our lovely listeners about New Year's resolutions, about making this year the best year yet?
Well, one step at a time, and good things take time. I think if you can have a 1% or 1 degree shift throughout the course of a day or a week or a period of time for your goals, like think of the impact of that over the long term. And I'm just remembering that good things do take time, and the slowness fosters like not only kind of more presence and enjoyment, but creativity. So trying to make space for that.
Yeah. A
How about you?
A 1 degree shift now, compounded over time, will put you in a very different place than you would have been had you not made that shift. So I think it's good advice.
I remembered my lost thought.
Hey, yeah, came back.
Should I throw it in before we
Please.
hit stop?
Give us the final thought.
Yeah, we were talking about finding your direction and purpose in life, and I was just thinking then, as you were sharing something about the Tao, or the Taoist view of there is this river of your life that is like, you could view it as this unseen river flowing underneath you at all times, and it is the natural direction of your strengths and values and dharma and all that. And we were talking about steering your ship, right? And I kind of see it as the lazy river of life, to tie it into this slowness thought. But you can steer on a raft in the lazy river. You can gently choose where you go in that river. If you're going to go completely upstream, it might be a bit futile or inefficient. But if you can sense in, relax into that Tao, that river and direction of your life, and steer it gently in the direction of your values, goals, hopes, and dreams and aspirations, I think that's a nice, lovely way to go through 2024.
I love that. Yeah, I actually used to be a river guide, and there's a big difference between fighting the current and putting the oars in the water and forcibly pushing the boat from one side to the next, or certainly trying to paddle upstream, versus, if you know the route fairly well and you're surrendering to the flow of the river, you just have to put the oar in the back of the boat and act as a rudder, and subtle movements will put you where you need to go.
Yeah, cool.
So I love it.
Well, Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Let's make it the best one yet.
Namaste. Psychedelic Therapy Frontiers is brought to you by Numinus, a mental wellness company committed to tackling the global mental health crisis by delivering best-in-class psychedelic-assisted therapies, contributing to the body of primary and clinical psychedelic research, and fostering healing through community connection and social responsibility. You can learn more about Numinus at numinus.com. That's Numinus.com. If you enjoyed the show today and you want to support us, here's how you do it. Rate and review the show on platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe to the Numinus YouTube channel, like the videos, and share it. Share the show or clips of the show with someone that you think will enjoy it. The content of this podcast does not constitute medical advice or mental health treatment. Consult with a medical or mental health professional if you believe you are in need of mental health treatment.